How do you think the SEC will shake out in the 2025 season? Tell me down in the comments section below. Leave a comment. Inform me of your SEC predictions, and I will do my best to respond to them. And I'm going to give you in this segment, regular season and postseason predictions. So not just what I think will happen in the 12-game regular season, but on SEC Championship Saturday, and in the college football playoffs, I will give you those records and those details. So let's just dive in and get right to it, honestly. So first and foremost, I think that the SEC is more similar to the Big 12 than the ACC or the Big 10 in terms of hierarchy. I genuinely believe that. Obviously, the SEC is way more talented than the Big 12. In terms of talent, the SEC and the Big 10 are closer to each other than any of them are to the ACC or the Big 12, especially the Big 12. The ACC is closer to the Big 10 and SEC than the Big 12 in terms of talent. But I'm talking about in terms of the hierarchy structure. Before we resume this segment, please take a few seconds of your time to make sure you have liked the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for the channel and for any team podcasts and playlists linked in the description, and also comment your thoughts down below in the comment section and join my Discord server via the description. All of those things I just asked you to do are completely free, and they sign you up for things related to my channel, or they don't sign you up for anything. No cost to you, and all the benefit to you because we release daily college football content here on College Football with Sam. If you want to support the channel monetarily, sign up for a YouTube membership or check any other links in the description for my merchandise store and Patreon page. Thank you very much, and let's get back to the segment. The Big 12 is very much compressed together. Now, I don't think necessarily anyone can win the league in the Big 12, but there's a lot of teams who theoretically can. There are only a few teams in the Big 12 that could probably win a playoff game, but that's a different discussion. We'll talk about the Big 12 next week in one of my segments where I give these record predictions with brevity. There will be an SEC predictions video sometime in August or later this month where I go through and I give a documented, not deep dive, those are different segments, but I dedicate a slide to each team. We're just going through these and giving my predictions and what I think will happen on these schedules, and that's really it here. But the point I'm trying to make is you have a bottom, but the bottom of the SEC can be pretty competitive with the top of the SEC in the way that you don't see with the ACC or Big 10, but you only see with the Big 12. And while only a handful of teams in the SEC can win it all, I think just like the Big 10, there's a little bit of a larger quantity of them. Like, there's just more of them than in the Big 10 or any other conference in theory, especially if you care mostly about talent. I think the Big 10 just personally has some better coaching and is better at roster retention. I think part of that's also because they're wealthier. The Big 10 is, now that universities can pay, now that alumni can get involved in the payment and booster process and it's all legal. The Big 10 has an advantage there that I think can correlate with having a coaching advantage to pay for them and also to be able to pay players to come back. However, the SEC still recruits the best. The SEC has a lot of good coaching, a lot of elite development. We see this especially with, I think, Georgia, Texas, Alabama. We have seen some elite recruiting here and there with Florida, A&M, Auburn, LSU. We saw Ole Miss use the portal in an elite way. And more importantly than having a good amount of teams who can win it all in theory, you have a lot of teams who I think in practice can win the SEC if certain things go their way. So I think that Arkansas, Kentucky, and Mississippi State are dead this year. I just want to paint the picture for you there. So Arkansas and Kentucky I have going winless in SEC play. Now maybe that's bold, but Arkansas, they play Alabama A&M, Arkansas State, Ole Miss and Memphis on the road, Notre Dame, Tennessee on the road off a bye, Texas A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State. Off the Week 11 bye, they play at LSU, at Texas, and hosting Missouri. All of those teams except for Mississippi State, Arkansas State, Alabama A&M, and maybe Memphis are significantly better than Arkansas in the power ratings. And they just don't get a break outside of weeks 1 and week 2. They don't go a week without playing someone in a super challenging spot. And they bring back Taylon Green and Bobby Petrino, but there's no energy around the program. I mean, the way Josh Pate summarized his thoughts on Arkansas initially was a sigh and then kind of a man, I don't know. It's just not good stuff. So I'm not touching Arkansas with a 100-foot pole. And then for Kentucky, it's pretty similar. I think Kentucky's more talented than Arkansas. I think they're better than Arkansas. But they do have more QB questions, and the QB disproportionately matters more. Kentucky, they have more QB questions. Arkansas at least has a good QB. And Kentucky, they play Toledo, but then they get Ole Miss. Ole Miss is not going to overlook them. Kentucky could win because they should get better and Ole Miss should get worse. But still, it's a tough spot. Then Eastern Michigan. Then off the week 4 bye at South Carolina and at Georgia back-to-back. Yikes. Off the week 7 bye, they host Texas, Tennessee, play at Auburn, host Florida, got Tennessee Tech at home, play at Vanderbilt, and Louisville. Louisville's not a layup. It's not. Louisville right now is a better program than Kentucky. So I think Kentucky as of right now, and I could change this because I could see him beating Ole Miss, I could see him beating Vanderbilt. I have him for now going 3-9, 0-8 in SEC play. I think that Kentucky and Arkansas are just dead meat. And then Mississippi State is for different reasons. I don't think that Jeff Lebby is necessarily on this type of hot seat, but I do think that he inherited a rough situation. And I have Mississippi State losing to Arizona State non-con. I have them beating Arkansas on the road because I think Arkansas is going to quit. I think after that many losses, and I'm predicting Arkansas to lose every game from week 3 on out, they'll eventually fire Pittman. The team will implode. It'll have to be a total factory reset for the Razorbacks. But outside of beating Arkansas and Southern Miss and Alcorn State, and they could lose to Southern Miss easily with Charles Huff and all he's bringing in over there from Marshall. I have no idea why Marshall fired him, but I digress. Those programs are in rough positions. And then I don't think anyone is fancying Vanderbilt at 7-6. 2-6, that's my prediction for them. It's a common prediction for them. They return a lot, but I don't think anyone is fancying Vanderbilt as a team that is going to do big things this year. They might produce an upset or two, but reach the college football playoff, heck no. Win the SEC, even more so. In fact, I'll ramp it up a bit. Hell no. They're not reaching the SEC championship. They're not going to go to Atlanta. I do have Vanderbilt winning all their non-con games and then beating Auburn in kind of an upset fashion, and then Kentucky off the week 12 bye. They could beat anyone on their schedule in my mind except for Texas, but they're not going to beat everyone on their schedule except for Texas. They're going to find some games to lose in the same way that I think they'll find some upsets to earn. It's a total chaos team right there. It's a team that is not going to play for the SEC championship or play for the playoffs or national championship, but they could easily stop someone from doing so. So Vanderbilt's going to be a fun watch this year. Now we're getting into the fun stuff. The fun stuff is in all these teams from here on out, I think, could theoretically win the SEC if things go their way, or at least reach the playoffs. Some of these teams, like Oklahoma and Florida, with their tough schedules, a lot would have to go their way for them to even reach Atlanta because they're probably guaranteed at least 2 conference losses, if not 3, in my mind. And they have some they have some issues, whether it's on their roster or I think for Florida, their head coach's game management, that could hold them back. But they also have a lot going for them. I mean, Oklahoma and Florida could be top 10 power-rated teams easily this year. I'm a guy from the North. I'm a Big Ten guy, and I'm saying that. So let's start off with LSU, who I have tied at 9th, 7-6, 4-4. They're much better than that, but I think that Brian Kelly is done. I think when you look at the schedule, they have another week 1 opener. Kelly's teams start off slow. They're not good in week 1 openers, and they're returning less than their opponent on the road in Clemson. That is a nightmarish matchup in my mind for LSU. Then they play Louisiana Tech. They play Florida. They play Southeastern Louisiana. At Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss on the road is likely a loss in that rivalry game, and it is a rivalry game. Many following the channel probably may not be familiar with that because I used to be a Big Ten channel for the most part, trying to branch out here. That is a rivalry game, and these teams under Kelly and under Kiffin especially have been pretty equal whenever they face off. Ole Miss was much better than LSU last year, but when they played each other, it's a pretty back and forth affair, and the home team usually wins. Ole Miss has enough good players to where I think they would beat LSU. Then they play South Carolina off the bye, at Vanderbilt, A&M at home, Alabama off the Week 10 bye, Arkansas, Western Kentucky, and at Oklahoma Week 14. I think in addition to the non-conference Clemson game, they drop Ole Miss, A&M, Alabama, and Oklahoma. You beat LA Tech, Florida, Southeastern Louisiana, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Western Kentucky. My question is, if they are 5-3 entering the Week 10 bye, like I think they will be, is Brian Kelly fired? Because at 5-3 with that schedule, you are not reaching the playoffs unless somehow you sneak into the SEC championship game and win, because they're not letting a 4-loss LSU with that schedule in the playoffs. That's not happening. I don't know. But I will say in my prediction here on the right-hand column on your screen, I do think Brian Kelly, in addition to Sam Pittman, are definitely fired. Stoops could be canned, and then I think one of Billy Napier and Brent Venables, one of them could also be canned. But more likely than not, if it's, Pittman and Kelly, I think. And then also potentially Mark Stoops with the season I think they'll have. South Carolina, I have 8-5, 4-4, and I have LSU losing to Syracuse in their bowl game. I just think with Kelly being fired that Syracuse will show up. I have that game being the Gasparilla Bowl. I think Syracuse will just show up because Fran Brown will still be their head coach. Vanderbilt I have playing in the Game Above Sports Bowl because I don't have enough Big Ten teams fulfilling the bowl requirement. So Vanderbilt has to go somewhere. They're 6-6. I have them beating a MAC team in that game. Just almost skipped over it. South Carolina I have going 8-5, 4-4. I love Lenoris Sellers. I think he's the second best QB in all of college football, only behind Cade Klubnik, quarterback at Clemson, South Carolina's biggest rival. I have them losing to Clemson, but I have them winning the rest of their non-con games, Virginia Tech, South Carolina State, and Coastal Carolina. And in conference, I have South Carolina beating Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Alabama, all at home. All of their conference road games, Missouri, LSU, Ole Miss, and A&M, I have South Carolina losing. Now, that could be pretty simplistic. Clemson's a home loss because I think Clemson is better than anyone else South Carolina plays at home by a mile. And Clemson has not lost. They haven't lost at South Carolina in, I think, over a decade now. I think the last time they lost was 2013 or 12, one of those years. 13 would have been the last time they played at South Carolina using the odd, even, that type of system. You all know what I'm talking about. I have South Carolina in their bowl game matching up against Virginia as a nightmarish matchup, absolutely easy, even if Lenoris Sellers decides to go to the NFL draft after his redshirt sophomore season, which he would be eligible. In the Birmingham Bowl, I think South Carolina would win that pretty convincingly. Florida at 8-5, 4-4, exact same record as last season. I think that when you look at Florida, they have a lot of untapped potential. Their coaching staff, with Billy Napier, is their biggest question mark. I think that Lagway's good. I love the players they have on the O-line and on the D-line. Absolutely love them. I mean, you got, Caleb Banks and Tyreek Sapp on that D-line, and then I think Jake Slaughter's the best center in all of college football. Trench play matters. Then you add in a quarterback who's big, physical, has a powerful arm, makes everything look easy. I mean, there's a reality where I think they win 9 games. But, maybe even 10. But a lot has to go right with them because coaching does matter. And I think that opening up with LIU and USF allows you to kind of ease into things. But at LSU on the road is going to be tough. At Miami will be tough. Texas and Georgia are still more talented than you. And A&M on the road will be tough. I have them losing to LSU, Texas, at Texas A&M, and Georgia, along with Miami in the non-con. And in addition to their, LIU and USF weaker non-conference opponents, I have them beating Mississippi State, Kentucky and Ole Miss on the road, Tennessee, and then Florida State. And I have them playing TCU in their postseason game, and that game will be in the Liberty Bowl. Pretty intriguing matchup there. I would favor Florida pretty heavily, given that Lagway won't be eligible to opt out. So unless he's injured, he's going to be playing in that game. I think a lot of Florida players would play in that game, perhaps, especially Lagway, and he'll be the most impactful player for the Gators this year. We have next Oklahoma, who I have going 9-4, along with four other SEC schools. There's going to be a lot of cannibalization in this conference, in my mind. Oklahoma has the toughest schedule, I think, in the SEC, perhaps the toughest in college football. Illinois State, Michigan, at Temple, Auburn, and then off the Week 5 bye, you get Kent State Week 6. Yes, I do think they enter that Texas game undefeated. Or if they're going to lose to anyone in that first 5 games, it's probably Michigan. I think you beat Auburn for sure. I'd favor you against Michigan, too. You're likely 5-0, 4-1 entering the Texas game. I will say, though, based on the build of this team, they're not ready to be national championship contenders. They're just not. The O-line will get better, but how much better, I don't know. John Mateer stank against competition that had similar talent to Wazoo, or better. And their wide receivers, while healthy, aren't as deep as they were in 2023. And when you look at Oklahoma's talent level, they're closer to the middle of the pack, talent-wise, than the top. I mean, Texas, Georgia, Texas A&M, Alabama are more talented than they are. Tennessee has been more established in recent memory than Oklahoma has. Ole Miss and Missouri have done more than Oklahoma has with less. And Florida has out-recruited them recently. And South Carolina, Lenora Sellers, definitely a better quarterback than John Mateer, in my opinion. So Texas and then Alabama on the road, and then I think Tennessee and South Carolina on the road are going to be losses. I think this team will struggle on the road with kind of the improved offense, but still some situational questions on offense. I do think they go undefeated at home, though. I think the only team that can maybe stop that, honestly, is Michigan or maybe LSU if LSU plays to their potential. But I do have them winning all their home games this year, going 8-4 regular season. That includes wins over Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, and I have them playing Michigan State in the Music City Bowl and winning that game. Now moving on to Missouri. Missouri, the law of close games says they're going to regress, and they don't return a bunch of production, but I think they've done well in the portal. I like the addition of Bo Pribula, and I love their offensive line. Connor Collison's one of the best in America. He is. He's, I think, one of the best centers in the country. Caden Green's one of the best guards. I love the additions of, Johnny Williams IV, Kevin Coleman on, offensive tackle, wide receiver. I like their defensive line, the addition of Damon Wilson, pairing him with Zion Young. Their schedule, more importantly, is easy. They start off the year Central Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana, South Carolina, and UMass. I think they win all 5 of those games. Off the Week 7 bye, they host Alabama. Get Alabama off a bye and you host them. You play Auburn on the road Week 8, at Vanderbilt Week 9, off the Week 10 bye. A&M and Mississippi State back-to-back at home, and then at Oklahoma and at Arkansas back-to-back. I think Missouri beats everyone except for Alabama, Auburn, and Oklahoma, who I have pegged as losses. Will beat a good South Carolina and A&M team, though, and win all their non-conference games. I think they face off against the talented, the hyped Texas Tech Red Raiders in the Texas Bowl, and I think they win that game because Texas Tech is, I think, a little bit older than Missouri and filled with players who I think will be mercenaries. So if they're not playing in the playoffs or if they didn't win the Big 12 championship game, I think for a bowl game, a lot of their better players will opt out. I can't necessarily say the same for Missouri, but Missouri's had opt-outs in the past. It's weird projecting bowl games. I'm just doing it for fun here. I have Ole Miss going 9-4, 5-3 in conference play. Ole Miss will go exactly the same in the regular season as they did last year, but their power rating will be infinitely lower. For example, I do think they start off beating Georgia State, beating Kentucky, Arkansas, Tulane, LSU, and Washington State, which is kind of an intriguing non-conference game in Week 7. However, instead of Ole Miss blowing out Georgia, I think Georgia will blow them out this year in Week 8. And I don't think they'll fare very well on the road at Oklahoma in Week 9. South Carolina at home Week 10 should be a win, same with the Citadel Week 11. I think Florida has the better roster than Ole Miss, and they beat them last year. So with Florida getting better and Ole Miss getting worse in the power ratings, why couldn't Florida travel to Oxford and win that game? And then off the Week 13 bye, I think they'll beat Mississippi State on the road. I have them. Surprise, surprise, this is a team I'm pretty low on this year, although high in the long run. I have them playing Notre Dame in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Still have Notre Dame winning, 9 games and definitely being a top 15 power-rated team. But losing 3 games with, it's the same thing with the SEC and some of these other conferences. Losing 3 games doesn't sound like much, but in the era of super conferences, where some teams get these disproportionately easier schedules at the same time they're good, means you have a lot more teams that win 10 games and 9 games than ever before. So it kind of diminishes the standing, which is why you have a team like Ole Miss and also Notre Dame matching up in such a lower quality bowl. Maybe that prediction's way too bold, but I think Ole Miss would lose that game. Tennessee, 9-4, 5-3. I'm going to keep it simple, going to keep it sweet, since I already released my Tennessee record predictions video. The Volunteers, I think, will win close games against anyone not named Georgia or Alabama or anyone not on the road who has similar talent to them. So I think they lose to Georgia, Alabama, probably those two by a pretty good margin, then I think they lose to Florida as well. But they beat Syracuse, East Tennessee, UAB, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Kentucky, Oklahoma, New Mexico State, and Vanderbilt. And in their bowl game, I have them projected to face off against the Nebraska Cornhuskers in the ReliaQuest Bowl. I think Nebraska would win that one. We have Alabama and Auburn. Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, and Auburn, by the way, are all tied for 4th, all with 5-3 conference records. Same with Missouri. Oklahoma, Florida, South Carolina, LSU are 4-4. So again, a lot of cannibalization. And you see number 3 A&M's the only team with a 6-2 record, and then Texas and Georgia have 7-1 records. We'll get to them in a little bit. Alabama and Auburn I want to pair together because they're rivals. They're both from Alabama. And I think there's a lot of similarities here. So Auburn's caught up to Alabama in terms of recruiting. I mean, they have made massive strides there. And I think that Auburn and Alabama share something in common in that their coaches are very good at punching above their weight class. We've seen Hugh Freeze play Georgia competitively for 2 years in a row, play Alabama competitively for 2 years in a row, should have beaten Alabama in 23 with Harsin's Players, which was pretty impressive. We've seen Kalen DeBoer at Washington, beat Oregon and Dan Lanning 3 times. We've seen him beat Steve Sarkisian twice. We saw him just coach circles around Kirby Smart for 3 quarters last season. But then we've seen Alabama fail to do the little things, and they miss the playoffs. And we've seen Auburn fail to do the little things, but that means they don't go bowling or they just finish 500 because they don't yet have Alabama's talent. I think that both of these coaches are very good schemers, but I think that for whatever reason there's something missing right now from them fitting in with their program like, a perfectly made puzzle, I guess. The puzzle pieces aren't quite fitting right. For Alabama, I think it's that DeBoer right now does not have an Alabama quality assistant staff. And for Auburn, I think that the missing piece right now is Jackson Arnold and the fact that Hugh Freeze is on a limited timetable. And I think DeBoer's a way better coach than Hugh Freeze as well. I mean, Freeze is very, very up and down. I don't think you know what you get out of him. I think you know what you get out of Kalen DeBoer. Yes, there's some playing down to your competition, but there's also DeBoer shows out in big games, and he's shown that at Washington. He's also showcased that at Alabama in that Georgia game. I have them both going not 8-4. I have Auburn going 8-4 regular season, 5-3. Alabama going 9-3, 5-3 in the regular season. Ironically, for talking about winning big games, I don't have Alabama winning a big game this year. I have them beating Florida State, ULM, Wisconsin, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Tennessee, LSU, Oklahoma, Eastern Illinois. I mean, actually, Oklahoma could be a big game. Oklahoma will enter that game with 3 losses, and if they have 3 losses but beat Alabama and go 9-3, that's a team that can be in the at-large playoff discussion. But I have them losing to Georgia, South Carolina, and Auburn. I think it's Georgia's year to beat Alabama because they play them in Sanford. I think that this Alabama team is still suffering from some of the mediocre assistant coaching and development that was there during the later Saban era. And by development, don't confuse that with where you're picked in the NFL. A lot of that stuff can be predetermined out of high school, the measurables, your genetic potential. I'm talking about, making sure that with the number 1 talent roster, you're doing a better job of competing for national championships and living up to the standard you've set than they did. And they just didn't do that in 2022. And in 2021 and 2023, they had some like kind of glaringly weird inconsistencies for the talent they had. I still think Alabama's suffering from that a little bit. And that doesn't help against Georgia and doesn't help against a team like Auburn, who's strong in the trenches, and I would say really strong everywhere except for QB. And I think Freeze can make up for that a little bit, especially since Arnold's athletic. And then Lenora Sellers is a freak athlete, and South Carolina still has players on defense. For Auburn, I have them starting out off 2-3. At Baylor, loss, Ball State, South Alabama, and then I think those are obviously wins, but at Oklahoma and at A&M, that's tough. I, however, think they match up pretty well with Georgia. They have the receivers to target Georgia's secondary, and they have the trench play to hold their own against the Bulldogs. So I pick that as my upset win. Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky I have as wins. I see Arkansas dropping one of Missouri, Arkansas, or Vanderbilt. I chose Vanderbilt, but I see them dropping one of those games because I think that Freeze is that coach who, again, you don't exactly know what you're getting out of him. They'll beat Mercer, and I also have them picking an upset game over Alabama. It's just Alabama has not dominated Auburn in Jordan Hare in ages. I don't think that's going to start this year when Alabama, in terms of its recruiting profile, is either staying level or even declining a little bit, and Auburn is continuing to rise there. Not talking about their 2026 class, guys, because that has no bearing on this year. Talking about what they've brought in. A&M, Texas, and Georgia, I all have making the college football playoff. All of them. And A&M will go on the road. I have them facing USC in my projections. Texas and Georgia will get first-round byes. So, as of right now, I don't have any SEC team hosting a first-round game. Now, that could change. And if there is going to be a team that I will pick to make the playoffs in addition to those three, because I think those three are close to locks, well, Texas and Georgia are. A&M not quite, but A&M I think is closer to a lock than anyone else in the SEC besides those two because their schedule is easier, and I like how they match up against Notre Dame, Florida, LSU, South Carolina, and I think they have a puncher's chance against Texas. Getting just two of those wins and beating all of the teams you should beat puts them in that discussion. And they're preseason top 10 for a reason. They bring back over 70% of their production. It's impressive. It would be Alabama, though, next. And Alabama has a higher ceiling than A&M. I also do think they have a lower floor, though. So those things could change. But I have A&M actually starting out 8-0. Beating UTSA, Utah State, Notre Dame, Auburn, Mississippi State, Florida, at Arkansas, at LSU. Off the bye, I do have them losing to Missouri. I think between one of LSU and Missouri, they lose. They'll beat South Carolina. They'll beat Sanford. They'll already be a lock to reach the playoffs by the time they play at Texas Week 14. It'll be competitive. It'll be a rivalry game. I think it will be clear in that game that Texas is better, but I think A&M will play them tighter because there's a decent chance that Elko might be a better game manager than Sark, and A&M has the experience edge. And as of right now, I would say is the better O-line, and that matters a lot. But I have, because it's a road game and because I think Texas is that far ahead in talent, and look, Sark is 3 years over Elko in terms of building his program, so I have that pegged as a loss. And I do have them losing at USC. Even though I think A&M power ratings-wise will be better than USC, they have to travel all that way across the country. And I think USC is one of these teams that will get better as the year goes on. Because the more games they have with D'Anton Lynn, I think the nastier the defense gets. And the more games Maeva has to settle in, I think the better as well. It'd be a close game, but a loss. Could be a win, though. I think A&M's one of these teams that, you know, if they go 11-1, I don't think anyone should be surprised with the depth they have, how they've recruited, and Elko's track record. Texas and Georgia have tied for first, both going 11-2 in the regular season, plus championship week, 7-1 in conference. Georgia will have the lower floor. Texas will have the higher floor and higher ceiling. But Georgia's game day coaching is better, so I expect Georgia to show out better in the big games. That's why I have them beating Texas twice again. Could be wrong there, and Texas matches up better with Georgia this year than they did last year, But Georgia, I also think, will be much better on offense this year in terms of maintaining a balance than they were last year. Won't be so up and down. You won't have the ceiling Beck provided in the passing game at times, but the receivers will be better. I think the rushing attack will be better as well. Stockton's legs, plus I think some better health, at least from a probabilistic standpoint at running back. I have Texas beating everyone on their schedule. So Ohio State, San Jose State, UTEP, Sam Houston, at Florida, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and A&M. Have them only losing to Georgia on the road, and Georgia again in the SEC championship game. Georgia, I have them beating Marshall, Austin Peay, Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Florida, Mississippi State, Texas, and Charlotte. I have them losing at Auburn and Georgia Tech, neutral field. I think between Auburn, Florida, and Georgia Tech, they drop one or two of those games. I don't see them actually losing to Texas or Alabama in the same way as any of those three games. I just think that Georgia does. The preview magazines are correct in the sense that Georgia has some roster limitations that I think with a tough schedule like this will come to bite them against, Georgia Tech when you haven't had a bye in a little bit, or Auburn sandwiched, in between Kentucky and Ole Miss, and after you probably get an emotional win over Alabama, and it's on the road in a hostile environment. I do think there are 1 to 2 losses likely against inferior competition that hit Georgia, but Texas and Alabama could also beat them in Sanford. I can see that for sure. And then I have them beating Texas for the SEC championship game. Both will be top 4 teams in my final rankings, 4 for Texas and 3 for Georgia respectively. I have Clemson ranked second, Penn State projected to be ranked number 1. Texas will be matched up against 5-seed Miami in the Cotton Bowl. They'll win that game, but lose to Penn State in the Peach Bowl. I have Georgia beating Indiana in the Sugar Bowl. I think Indiana will play them competitively because I think Cignetti is a really good staff and is also a, Saban disciple. And I think he carries a lot of those attributes to Indiana the way that Smart does to Georgia. But Georgia's just so much more talented, bigger, stronger, more athletic. So I think Georgia would eventually wear Indiana down and win that Sugar Bowl convincingly. They would also, in my estimation, move on from the Sugar Bowl to play Clemson in the Fiesta Bowl. Now, I think Clemson is a better quality team than Georgia. I think that Fiesta Bowl would look a lot like the Orange Bowl last year, where Penn State's a better quality team than Notre Dame, more well-rounded, has the better odds roster-wise to win it all, but they just get out-coached by Notre Dame, and they don't have that same, that same type of toughness that Notre Dame had in that game, whether for a variety of reasons. I don't exactly know why. But that's kind of how I envision the Clemson-Georgia game going, is Clemson uses the outside to kind of outpace Georgia maybe early because Georgia won't face the type of outside talent and cohesiveness and just timeliness between Klubnik and his receivers that they'll face with anyone else throughout the year. So that'll take some adjusting. But I think that Georgia will win in the trenches, unlike the Orange Bowl last year where the loser won in the trenches. Penn State won there. Notre Dame actually won on the outside and won the turnover battle. At least, yeah, did they win the turnover battle? I forget, but I think you see the point. Clemson's the better power-rated team in my estimation, but Georgia is just deeper in certain positions that matter for game control. D-line, they could have similar talent on the O-line if it all pans out well, and they actually have a better running back room. And I think Kirby Smart's a much better game manager than Dabo Swinney. So I have them winning the Fiesta Bowl against Clemson, but I have them losing to Penn State in the national championship game. Franklin's a far inferior coach to Smart, but he has better coordinators, more experienced roster. And you guys know my thoughts on Penn State if you've watched my channel. I think that Penn State's going to be, at the end of the year, significantly better than the field, to a point where it won't matter if Franklin hasn't changed his game management ways. They're just going to be that good as Knowles gets more snaps with the defense, as Kotelnicki, entering year 2 with Aller, who could be round 1, pick 1. Those receivers for Penn State, they have 3 of them, possibly 4 with Denmark. It's just going to be a really hard team to stop. Very hard. But I think the SEC goes back to the national championship game. I have Georgia winning the SEC and then marching their way to the title game. And I think Texas receives a first round bye too. A&M reaches the playoffs for the first time, it'll be very historic. Alabama could make the playoffs, but I think between one of Georgia, Texas, Oregon, Alabama, and Ohio State, and I'd even throw in Notre Dame there, I think at least two of those teams, if not perhaps more, are just missing the playoffs altogether due to how much experience they're losing. And then Alabama returns more, but they were the worst out of those teams last season at the end. Just some broken things there. So those are my SEC regular season and postseason predictions. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know again in the comments section below how you think the SEC will play out. As of right now, I think the best two programs by a significant margin in the SEC are Georgia and Texas. Now, I love Kalen DeBoer. I almost picked Alabama, almost said Washington there. I almost picked Alabama to win it all in 2024, then backed off on that. Thank goodness I did. I sided with Georgia, which was incorrect, but Georgia at least won the SEC and made the playoffs, getting the number 2 overall seed. And I think if they survived that Notre Dame game, with how Smart manages games, they then could have went on to win it all. Wouldn't have been the favorites. Ohio State was better, but you get the point. I love Kalen DeBoer, and that conflicts with my prediction for Alabama, but I just think there are some missing pieces that need to be found for them to move on and have success. Thank you for watching College Football with Sam. Make sure that you've liked the video, subscribed to the channel, hit the notification bell for the channel and team playlists and podcasts in the description, join the free Discord server where we talk college football 24/7, and have commented your thoughts down below. Check out the description for any ways you can support the channel monetarily. Everything else I've asked you to do is completely free, and your support means the world to me. We're trying to become the next big thing on college football YouTube. 6-figure subscribers, maybe 1 million one day. I think we can do that. And also check out any videos or playlists, anything in these columns right here, where there will be videos and playlists. Yeah, you get the point. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one.